Well, hi everyone. I'm John Williams, owner and winemaker of Frogs Leap.
I'm Rory Williams, John Williams' arch nemesis.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, fortunately we've already
We've made a temporary compact and agreed to appear together again today.
Not only that, we've already started drinking.
Yeah.
We hope you have too.
My dad turned to me 5 minutes ago, was like, I'm thirsty. You want something to drink?
We wanted to be
you couldn't
prepared.
wait 5 minutes?
It's a long afternoon. It's a beautiful day here in the Napa Valley, as you can see behind us. Although I think we should start to set the fire here. It's a little chilly.
You know, it's 45 degrees, which for us weak-willed Californians is basically freezing. And so we're sitting here shivering. But no, we're just starting to enjoy winter here. We've had actually a colors this year.
Unbelievable, because we have we had a hard frost? I know I was away
No, we
for a
have
couple
not.
days. Yeah.
Usually by this time of year, we've had only a little bit of rainfall, and we've had at least one really hard frost that usually kills all the leaves off, and this is before the valley turns green. And it kind of worked the other way around this year, where we've had some cold nights, but nothing with a really, really hard frost. And we've had a lot of rainfall already, which is good. And so the whole valley is green, the cover crop's going crazy, and all the leaves are still golden. It's pretty incredible.
It's actually spectacular to visit. So if any of you are close by, drive up to Napa. It's really beautiful right now. We've got a full complement of guests at the winery today, and so people are still out. I noticed around Thanksgiving, after about a few hours with your relatives, you're looking for something to do, and so we've got quite a no,
a few hours before you get to your relative's house. Of course, that's until you pop the good Burgundy for Thanksgiving, and then it allows us to stick around a little bit longer.
Well, certainly not as good as a Frog's Leap wine, but Burgundy does all right. Yeah. We don't make a Pinot Noir, so we can talk about it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we've got some interesting wines to try with you today, but we're really hoping to make this a more interactive tasting. So if you're there, use your chat. It's a chat function, right?
Yeah, just send in questions, and Megan and Scott are here with us off camera, helping us field some questions, and we'd love to chat with you guys about the wines. The first of which, Deb, which you've very graciously pre-poured.
I generously. Did you notice that we have new wine glasses at the winery?
We are just getting fancier and
we
fancier.
are getting. Yeah, I can tell the way you're dressing up. And
yeah, I thought I was going to bring my Stein or something like that, but no, we've got fancy glasses now.
This is the 2020 Shale and Stone. Brand new release, and very excited for this vintage. And what's your early taste here?
I love it. This wine was kind of made exactly how we love making Chardonnay, which was picking the vineyard, the Truchard vineyard, from the top to the bottom, and kind of getting it right at exactly the right time. 2020, we'll put it out there right away, was obviously an extremely crazy year, especially at the end of harvest with the glass fire. We were very fortunate in being able to get all of our grapes, including the Chardonnay, off ahead of those fires. But the wine points to me what we were experiencing going into harvest with 2020, which was a fabulous vintage. Absolutely, obviously with everything going on in 2020, it was actually a kind of surreal vintage at first, just because of how beautiful and normal the conditions were. Lovely, cool summer, no big heat spikes. And the Chardonnay really reflected that kind of balance, I think. And I think it was a really cool expression of the Chard that year. I think this has got plenty of acidity. I think it's actually got some generosity in its early going as well.
Well, the same technique we've been using for a while, and also this kind of laissez-faire attitude towards malolactic fermentation, and that we don't control. And this is 100% ML. I think you can get a little bit of the textural richness out of that. My early impressions of this is don't rush into this wine. Typical of Frog's Leap Chardonnays, another 6 months in the bottle is really going to help this wine. So stretch out your 18 and 19 at this point. Because I think another 6 months, this is going to really start to blossom.
So it's interesting, because it is a full. We were checking the notes, and out of memory with the wine, this is a full malolactic wine, and so it's a full ML, which either of us could explain what that.
Yeah, why don't you explain this?
Yeah, so well,
because I certainly
hop on
can't.
my chemistry vest here. So,
because it's not really a fermentation.
well, it's sort of described that way, but it's definitely not the kind of fermentation that you think of with wine in general, which is the alcoholic fermentation, where yeast convert sugar to alcohol, heat, and CO2. That's the one that obviously all wines go through, or else it's not wine. There is a secondary fermentation of sorts, or really a chemical change of sorts, that takes place with almost all red wines, but kind of variable with white wines, called malolactic. It's where lactic acid bacteria convert malic acid to lactic acid. Okay, and we'll break that down, but basically those are just two different types of acids that appear in wine.
So the malic acid is naturally in wine.
Exactly.
And that's converted to lactic acid. And the reason that that's of interest to us is that malic acid has two acid groups on it, and lactic acid only has one. So you've effectively reduced your acidity, not in the wine by half, but the malic acid conversion reduces the malic portion to by half.
And what that means for you is you can look at the total acidity in the wine.
If a train left Chicago going,
what I'm trying to say is, so basically, if you look at the total amount of acidity in the wine, and that will have changed from the start of malolactic fermentation to the end of it, where malic is converted to lactic acid, the total amount of acid in the wine won't have changed very much. But the perception you will get of the acidity of the wine will have decreased significantly. And so that it softens the wine. It can have, because nothing's simple with wine, and lots of things go on and along in parallel. Sometimes I think it's worth explaining why, despite being a full ML wine, this doesn't have any buttery characteristics. It's not this blousy kind of butter bomb of
because
a wine.
that's how you get that real buttery character. It's this diacetyl that's produced by cultured bacteria that a lot of winemakers add to create this conversion.
Especially in that kind of butteriness that comes with it is not a direct result of malolactic fermentation. It's something that can happen along the way if certain conditions are present. And the conditions meant for that are low acid to begin with and oxygen during that period, which
So it isn't the strain of bacteria necessarily?
It can be that, but an important kind of basis for it happening at all is that there's got to be a little bit of oxygen ingress into that wine. It helps promote the enzyme that actually makes the conversion and all that. But I think it's important because when we store our Chardonnay over the winter, it's not in individual French oak barrels. It's not in all these little individual barrels, which will tend to have a little bit more oxygen coming into them. Instead, we're storing our Chardonnay all as one single lot inside a very large concrete tank, and almost no oxygen at all. It's almost completely impermeable. It sits there untouched with no sulfur. I forgot to mention the addition of sulfur can actually promote the production of diacetyl, the butteriness as well.
And decrease the chance that you're going to get a malolactic fermentation if you add enough, which we obviously don't do. So
it's all of the conditions that we give the Chardonnay when it's aging over its 9-month aging process in that concrete tank allow the wine to find its kind of equilibrium with malolactic fermentation while not promoting the butteriness, which is not really, but certainly not our style. I only really like that kind of flavor in extremely small amounts, and it can be quickly overdone.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that, the butter. Hey, we got our first question, by the way, from Jane in South Barrington, Illinois, who cops to the fact that she already drank her fellowship offerings before this tasting.
Jane, I like your style.
I like your style, by the way, Jane. But then
it does leave you with the conundrum of not having the wines that we are talking about.
And her question is, will this Zoom session still be valuable? Which of course cracks us up because we're pretty much
we're hoping to Jane. We're hoping to convince you to buy a whole nother set of wines. Maybe a before and after comparison.
And by the way, Jane, I just looked up the weather in South Barrington, Illinois, and it's going to be 11 degrees on Monday evening. So I would get some more of these wines as soon as you can to keep yourself warm. But
you did have a second part to your question, which would the 18 Cab and 18 Merlot be valuable for the session? I'd drink the Merlot now. I'd hold on to that Cab for Monday evening when it's 11 degrees outside and you're looking for something to warm it up.
Yeah.
But it's obviously we're happy you drank the wines and hope you still find it valuable. Gene, you're after our own heart here, though. we get a bottle and we can't put it down until we've had a little.
Oh, Gene, you and I are in the same camp. That's for sure.
Love it.
Open that box and drink it. That's what it's for.
Yeah.
For sure.
But getting back to the 2020 Chard, I think you're absolutely right. This has got a lot of presence. It's got a lot of material to the wine. It's got a lot of substance, but it's not heavy. It's not buttery. It's not this big oaky wine or anything like that. Instead, it's just got all that potential that I think is going to evolve over time.
Does as much of this wine get drunk in your house as gets drunk in my house?
I don't know that that's possible, actually. I do believe you set a record, yeah.
My standing joke is it's lucky we have any of this to sell the rate Tori drinks it. She really enjoys our Chardonnay. So I think she's going to like this one.
I got to tell,
which means a lot to our marriage.
Yeah, we got to start kegging it for your house or something like that. But no, we're super happy with the Chardonnay, and it was obviously touch and go vintage, especially at the end there. But extremely pleased with when you drink wines like this, obviously the memories are bittersweet in that.
Well, we've talked many times about this vineyard, which we've been working with really since 1985, and I think at this point we've met every grapevine in that vineyard. The relationship with the Truchard family is so intense. We just feel like we're part of their family, and vice versa. So we're really excited to be continuing to make wines from these. Vines are now 40 years old and 42 years old, and that's pretty extraordinary in the world of Chardonnay.
Yeah, 42-year-old hillside vines.
Yeah.
From Julie Baker, does the composition of the concrete reflect the flavor of the wine? Is that where the minerality and stone essence comes from? I wouldn't say that it's directly affecting the wine in that way. It's not adding. Ideally, it's not adding flavor. Concrete flavor isn't as delicious as marketing terms might make you want to think it is. But what the concrete's really doing, and you came up really, Deb, with this idea and this technique.
Need to cop to the fact that the wine isn't in direct contact with the concrete.
In a concrete tank that's lined with stainless steel, but it's so that's obviously blocking that flavor transfer. But it is important that it is in concrete because these walls are about a foot thick, and so they hold temperature over the course in a natural way over the course of the finishing of the fermentation. So just I think we've probably talked about it in the past, but the wine is brought into the grapes are brought into the winery, they're pressed. The fermentation starts in a regular stainless steel tank, but then is barreled down into the French oak barrels, ferments for just 4 or 5 days, so it doesn't actually finish its fermentation in oak barrel. Instead, before it goes dry, it's all put into this large concrete tank. And we're counting on that concrete tank to hold the temperature of the wine because it's very critical for the finishing of a fermentation that the temperatures stay high. Now, we could do that with glycol lines or by manipulating the temperature in some way. But we have found that allowing the Chardonnay especially to kind of chart its own slow path of temperature decline as we get into the winter, and often we'll find this wine is still sitting at 60 degrees even in the middle of the winter, which is crazy. It should be in the 40s or 50s, and that is what's allowing the wine to finish its fermentation completely, and really allowing the yeast to find every last little milligram of sugar that's in the wine and getting it absolutely.
And that's the key to this wine is that it is completely dry, and that really makes such a huge difference.
Indirectly, it is what I think helps promote that kind of minerality in the wine, which is because if the wine is left with any sweetness or any of the kind of familiar trappings of what we don't like about some, the kind of prototypical or archetypical California Chardonnay, that's going to destroy any minerality, any kind of, real delicate, delicate components to the wine. Because minerality and those kinds of stoniness and that kind of things, man, they're hard to get, and they're easily destroyed by sugar, oak, alcohol, low acidity, any kind of tropical flavors and things like that. Yeah. It's all got to be done very, very subtly. And so the whole thing with the Chardonnay has been keeping the hands off and allowing the wine to kind of chart its own course. And by doing that, it allows the wine to reveal from Chardonnay, which is a naturally mineral grape, when you start stripping away the trappings and giving it the right path. So,
we're going to have I know we got a question coming up about the Cab and the Merlot and ageability and when to drink those. We don't generally speak about that so much with Chardonnay. We tend to see the lifespan of these wines as being five years or so. But have you? When's the last time you opened? I opened a 12 the other day, which now is getting close to 10 years old. I love white Burgundies at about 10 years of age, but they are a different experience than drinking them when they're young. What's your advice on older white wines? It's a little hit or miss. Basically.
It can be a little hit or miss. I think that, especially when you get past 10 years for a Chardonnay, even our Chardonnay, I think it's an acquired taste, I think, for some folks. Because you will get into more of the kind of almondy characters, which are hazelnut, which are oxidation characteristics. And ideally, the wine isn't oxidized and just doesn't just taste like bad sherry. But ideally, that's adding to the wine and kind of just giving a different kind of approach to it.
Yeah. Well, look, there are lots of red wines produced in the Napa Valley. The red wines that don't last 10 years. So the fact that we're talking about, but it's and we'll talk about this when we taste the reds. Is that you need to remember that this isn't this aging thing, which is so hard to understand, isn't. And we've been taught that the wine is not good, not good, great, and that's when you have to drink it, and then not good, bad. And I don't think it's like that. I think it really is a continuum on a curve of this path. I mean, wine is not the stable end for grape juice. It's going to continue to oxidize. It's going to continue to develop other characteristics, and so it's on a continuum. And it's fun to watch a wine on its continuum, on its life path.
It's fun to watch. Right now, if we're drawing the curve of the Chardonnay right now this wine's got lots of peach flavor, and it's got a lot of kind of primary white fruit that's very typical for a young white wine. It's not unusual for it to have that kind of fruitiness, relative fruitiness now at an early age. That will decline, but fruit flavors, which are esters, slowly break apart in wine, and that's why old wines in general just are not as fruity as young wines. And so as this wine kind of loses some of that fruitiness over the next 3 or 4 years, over the next 6 to 10 months, this, it's the fruit is going to kind of decline just a little bit, and that's what's going to allow the wine to blossom open and really show a lot of the kind of secondary and tertiary aromas that we love. But then you get beyond that, you start to lose a little bit more fruit, and it becomes much more about these kind of secondary aromas, which you either love or you don't, or you find interesting or you don't. And as the wine gets to 10 years, it's got very little fruit left at all.
Or you find that you're serving different kinds of things, like a 10-year-old Chardonnay. You should be looking at camemberts and
exactly, something with a little earthiness to it to kind of complement what's going to taste a little bit funky if you're used to Chardonnay that's a year old.
We're going to move to reds here shortly, but I think a good question came across is the process for the Chardonnay. How is it? Is it similar or dissimilar from the many people have had the Rachel Rossi word? Yeah. And this is an opening for you to talk about the kind of an exciting new twist in the cellar this year with our brand new eggs. And,
so the Rachel Rossi Sauvignon Blanc, which is from kind of a reserve style Sauvignon Blanc that we make, that hopefully many of you have tried, is fermented and aged entirely in unlined concrete. So this is
in an egg.
In an egg. Yeah. So an egg-shaped concrete tank that's about 500 gallons big. We have been experimenting with for many years with this one block of Sauvignon Blanc. Well, we've liked it enough.
We're super excited about it. Actually,
we bought 8 more for this harvest, and we just bought 2 eggs that are kind of super eggs, so double the size. It's different from the process with the Chardonnay in the sense that the Rachel Rossi, any wine that's going into these eggs, is never touching an oak barrel. Very importantly, they're being pressed directly into those concrete tanks, which are not lined with stainless steel, and instead are a special formulation of concrete that's designed to not leach concrete into the wine, a kind of food safe, if you will. And then they're fermenting, they're finishing their fermentation in that tank, and they're not ever leaving that tank. unless something goes wrong, the Rachel Rossi and any of the wines we're fermenting in these eggs are staying in there and just.
So in that respect, it's got this long lead time. You get
Exactly.
the Chardonnay. It's
So
just that
there are some
there's
similarities.
no oak, and it's fermenting in its entirety in this this egg.
But I will say, even in that situation, you're not so much getting any concrete flavor directly. It's more that extended and aggressive time on the lees, really, in that tank alone, really adds some tension to the wine. We're super excited about it, especially we've experimented with it with Chardonnay with some good results, some results that we weren't super happy with. And experiments are ongoing there to figure out, okay, maybe there's some role for it. But we've been super excited with it about Sauvignon Blanc, and that's I hope all of you love our Sauvignon Blanc, but it's the Rachel Rossi being a kind of 100% concrete example of a trend line that's beginning with the Sauvignon Blanc, and we are excited to incorporate it more and more into our Grand Cuvée Sauvignon Blanc, if you will, and possibly the release of the creation and release of a winery only or a concrete special wine just for you guys and just for the tasting room. So
yeah, it's pretty special. We're very excited about this. You know, it's interesting.
We don't have a label for it yet.
Yeah,
of course,
fair enough. Yeah. Damn. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah.
You know, we're rather unusual for a Napa winery in that 50% of our production is typically white wine and 50% red, and we are equally.
We get, seeing as we've spent the last half hour talking about it, obviously we get pretty jazzed about white wines. We do have a question here about ever considering creating an orange wine. They seem to be quite trendy now. I love orange wines. I don't think we have.
You want to do the cab first, and then we'll finish.
Yeah, I think we'll finish with the Merlot.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think we have the right material for an orange wine, or I wouldn't want to do.
Why don't you tell people what an orange wine is?
An orange wine is a wine
me.
where you take white grapes and ferment them like red grapes. So you ferment white grapes on their skins until the wine finishes its fermentation. The wine ends up with a kind of orange or amberish tinge to it. And you end up with a white wine that has tannin in it, which is, if you've never had it before or if you're unprepared for it, it can be a very unusual experience. However, there are some unbelievably amazing orange wines in the world, especially from areas like Northeast Italy and Slovenia. Just make some of the most incredible orange wines in the world. Sicily is very famous for them as well.
I was really leery about them until I was actually in London eating at an Ottolenghi winery, and with the right cuisine, they really sing the properly done.
Yeah, so, and they have to be present. They're kind of like I mean, they don't taste like sherry, but they're like sherry in a way where they have to find, or Madeira, where they have to find the right context, or orange or yellow wine, Vin Jaune or something like that, where out of the right context, they can be really strange and not that interesting, but in the right context, there's nothing better. I would say that Chardonnay might be actually the thing we most would experiment with if we were ever to do an orange wine. And
typically, they're what varieties?
It's typically Sauvignon Blanc. You see it with all sorts of different varieties. Macabeu in Sicily. What are they doing with? I forget. But it's varieties that are going to benefit from the increased aromatic impact, but also achieve balance in the final wine. And taking, like, for example, I've never had an orange wine Riesling, but I would imagine that it would just get to be too much. It's kind of like dialing things too high, and you end up losing a bit of the clarity and purity of the wine.
I think we're talking ourselves into this, by the way.
Wait, do you want a job? Who asked that question? Yeah. Do you want to come work for Frogs Leap next year and come make an orange wine?
Yeah. Believe me, nothing's too crazy for this winery. We'll try
already.
anything.
We're already setting our 22 fermentation plans.
Well, in the meantime, I've poured myself and you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, a little bit of our 19 cab, and we're really excited to talk about this wine. Again, another spectacular vintage after the 18. Just such a warm and generous vineyard, but really maintaining its integrity, its balance. This is just prototypical Frogs Leap Cabernet Sauvignon.
Yeah, I think that the 19 is actually, I think it really fits with our style, and I'm super happy with the wine. I think it's got a little more richness to it than usual, or not richness exactly, but a little more tannin to it than usual. I think reflecting this long growing season, but also a little bit of heat at the end that we, if there's a separator between it and the 18, which both 18 and 19 are great classic vintages that are going to go a long
forever.
distance.
Yeah.
19 was a little bit warmer with a couple of heat spikes during the harvest, and I think it kind of added a little bit to the wine and marked the wine as being different than the 18s in that they're a little bit more reticent at first, but are going to ultimately have this kind of long potential.
Well, and it plays into a question that Scotland came up with: is the 19 ready to drink now, or should he wait and keep this to age? And the answer is yes.
The answer is yes, obviously. If you had to make a choice between the 18 and the 19 right now, drink the 18.
You think so?
Yeah, I think so. It's the 19 is really beautiful, but I think it's going to benefit from opening up just a little bit more. I would, this is
to me, this is a little more generous. I mean, it's robbing the cradle in either case, right? But this to me, it's got a little more alcohol than the 18. It's a little more generous across the palate. It shows a little bit more of those warm flavors. Well, there you go. I'm going to drink my 19. You're going to drink your 18, and I'll come and borrow a bottle from you.
Holy crap! Wait a second. No, I think that it's hard to go wrong. I mean, it is an early release just to the fellows. This isn't released in the broader marketplace yet.
And it won't be for a little while, right?
Won't be for a little while, and we get it to you guys so you can have it for the holidays and get first crack at it, essentially. But I think that the 19 with the little, we liked how the wine with that kind of little bit of extra richness, a little bit of extra generosity. I don't know, marks the vintage in a cool way, and I think that it was exciting in 19 where we had lots of great lots to choose from, and we're able to kind of really make the wine that we wanted to. I think it still has that kind of that classic Rutherford dust kind of balance to it, which is that kind of tension between the herbs and the kind of dried herbs and the black fruit and for us a little bit of reddish fruit.
So Rory, I'm going to put you on the spot. Our alcohols have been creeping up just a little bit, and we're typically 13.5, 13.6 through a lot of those vintages. Now it's 13.9, 14.1. This is 14.5. Is this you subverting the style of Frog Sleep, or is this?
I'm usurping the style of Frog Sleep. No, I think this was.
I know we've had some vintages that have finished with a little bit of warm, and we didn't really. You can correct for those. We've done a lot less corrections, it seems like.
I think that's the upshot of it is that I'm not particularly beholden to numbers. That's something
I could tell that from your report cards.
Math, me?
Actually, you're pretty good, Matt.
Yeah, I'm pretty good at but I'm not particularly tied to one decimal point or the other about where wine ends up. I'm curious about. Or I'm leery of extremes on either end, but I want to make a wine that's make a wine with you and with Pablo and with Frank and make wines that are as undisturbed as possible, basically. 19 was a warm vintage. I think, if you're trying to draw a long-term comparison, 19 was a warm year, just like 18 was a little bit cooler and 20 was a little bit warmer than 19 and 21 was the warmest yet. I think that there is a little bit of that influence going on. But I do think that little extra bit of heat during harvest with the 19 really drove sugars up a little bit. It didn't really change the overall balance of the wine other than just making the sugar superficially higher. And we either could decide to correct for that, lower the alcohol, or not. And I remember having the conversation that we decided not to.
Typically, it's one or two lots that get high and add to a little bit higher end. And so what we would have done in the past was take that particular lot, and typically what happens is that those wines dehydrate slightly on the vine, and that's what drives the sugar up. And so the typical way of solving that problem is to rehydrate it when you get it to the winery, and by that you simply add a little bit of water that was naturally missing in the last that evaporated in those last few days before, so it's correcting for that. And we're not doing that as much as we used to. That was really my technique. But Time will tell, of course, time will tell.
I think it,
You
I mean,
know,
I think it tells the story of the vintage a little bit better. The alcohols on the 2020 is lower, which is kind of funny thinking about it that way, where
Yeah.
you think about 2020 as marked by heat, marked by extremes. That was really only at the very, very tail end of harvest that you had those kinds of extremes after we had picked all of our Cabernet off, and our Cabernet is lower in alcohol naturally in 2020 without any adjustments and I think that it's a function, data. It's your own fault, by the way, of teaching me, when we walk through vineyards and because I hope most of you know that my dad and Frank leads and I sample all the grapes. This is what we do. We don't have interns who sample the grapes and just give us numbers that we then, take the berries and pop them into a machine that goes bing and tells us whether it's ripe or not. It's a matter of us going out and tasting the grapes and deciding, making a judgment call about whether the grape is ready to pick. And numbers inform a decision like that. Obviously, if something is coming in with this acid numbers or a pH number or a sugar number that's just kind of way out there and you're going, whoa, wait a second, that might guide your decision, but ultimately it's a flavor decision. I think our wines, of paramount importance has always been maintaining the freshness, maintaining the acidity in the wine, because that is what's going to give the wine aging potential. And I think that it doesn't affect the long-term aging potential of the wine to change the alcohol percentage by 4 or 5 degrees. It changes taking that same kind of number and changing the acidity that way does change
it goes
things.
a little bit hand in hand. So I'm going to play a little devil's advocate, and that's that if there's an abnormality in the harvest, and we've seen this a couple times, these sudden, really incredible heat snaps where we'll get 114 degrees for 3 or 4 days at a time. I think the jury's out whether those vintages, which cause a sudden dehydration of the grape, wouldn't be better to be adjusted back
Well, you're speaking directly to an event that happened in 2017, which was a vintage marked by extreme heat spikes, especially during harvest, where we did have 3 days above 114 degrees, and the cab grapes went crazy. They were not ready to harvest yet. The grapes tasted themselves unripe, and yet they had sugar levels that would, if we had fermented them at that time, would have translated into a wine with 17 or 18% potential alcohol. That's a scary number as a winemaker. It's not what you sign up for when you start studying at Davis.
Yeah, but I remember we sold those wines off, and there was a broad market for them.
Broad market for them. But we did see rehydration in those grapes naturally. Sometimes the grapes themselves on the vine will bounce back, and that was a judgment call on our part to leave those grapes, allow them to kind of rebalance themselves, and find balance in the wine in the long run. And
this whole discussion is really at the pulse of what goes on here on a day by day, hour by hour basis during the harvest. We collect all these samples in the morning. We bring them in. We run numbers on them, and then we sit down and we talk. And what's the weather? What's going on? How many grapes can we take this? And so this is the heart and soul of what it means to bring in a harvest. And it's what makes...
Where's my coffee? Wait a second. That is part of the conversation.
We all have to make our own coffee, unfortunately. A couple good questions have come across, though, and I'm going to take the first one, and that's the longest amount of time that you'd lay back the 18 or 19 cab.
How much time you got?
Yeah, how much time you have is really the answer. I mean, we're drinking our Cabernets from the 80s now, and they're just still so fresh and so vibrant and so wonderful. These wines, both the 18 and the 19 from classic vintages, I believe are 30, 40, 50-year-old wines, no problem at all.
Yeah.
And which, and now that I'm starting to make wines that are going to outlive me, it's starting to get a little annoying. So,
He's probably the most dangerous with changing the style. It's like, I need something that's going to
I need something to drink right away.
I can drink right away.
10 years probably.
Max on the wine.
But a couple good questions. So the answer is, boy, you're well served to put as much of this down in the cellar as you can, because the joy of drinking these wines at 20, 15, 20, I had a 95 the other day. And so what's this 21-year-old Cabernet, and it was just singing, absolutely singing, and just saying, "Thank you for waiting." And
Yeah.
thank you for waiting.
If you let history be a guide, you know, when we drink, right now, if we drink a wine from the early aughts, say an '01, an '02, up to an '06, those are, you know, 15 to 20-year-old wines.
Have you called in the military
Yeah.
or something?
Oh my God. We got the open door policy here. And those wines still have some of their primary fruit. They're still holding on to some of that youthful energy. I think by the time you get to the late 90s and the mid 90s, those have lost a little bit of that fruit.
Yeah.
They really are sending in the Air Force, aren't they?
Can you guys hear that? Oh my God.
But
I think jets are going over the top of us.
yeah, anyway,
I hope they're jets.
pause for reflection on the wine.
Are we invading Ukraine finally? Or what's going on here? Yeah. There we go.
There we go.
Yeah. They're gone.
Yeah. Call up Langley and tell him to turn down the music. You know, but the wines will change over time. I would say that especially with the 19, I would drink this wine over the next 2 to 3 years, and then I would wait on it. I would, you know, I think it's gonna.
See, so if you
It's
like
gonna
this,
enter a little bit of an awkward phase as
Yeah.
it gets into like
that's
4 or
good
5
advice.
years old,
That's good advice.
and
So
then
either-
it'll pop back
either-
up again at 10 years
So
old.
either
and
in the
really
next
just
3
be beautiful.
years or wait until 10 years to start drinking them again.
Yeah.
That might be good advice.
Yeah, I think that
Probably
it's
not, but
it's
it
going to
might
be
Yeah.
it's going to be they're both wines that are going to go 30-year plus, but offer different things over time. For
So
sure.
a couple questions come up for the vineyard department here, and from Joe, what steps are taken to protect the vines from cold snaps or general winter? So as the vines now are going into senescence and getting ready for the winter, and I've noticed that there are some wind machines that have gone on, which are so what's up with that? Because I don't think we do that. So what's the story on that? And then you know. I think as the harvest ended, we had some nice warm weather, and now we've broken the drought, but the drought is the fact that we'd had so little rain last year is going to affect the grapes for next year. Do you want to talk a little bit about both of those?
Yeah. So for Joe, steps are taken to prevent the vines from cold snaps or general winter weather. With any kind of mature vine right now here in Napa Valley,
That's what we're looking for.
absolutely not. Or
Yeah.
we're doing nothing to protect them. That we want them to go through these hard frosts. The vines, after they go through a physiological change, right exactly at the time that they start to change, that red grapes will start to change color in the middle of the summer. So this is middle of July when they go through veraison. The vines will simultaneously start to turn their canes from green shoots into brown shoots, they'll harden off their wood. And that is a winter protection kind of function of the vines, which allows them to go through hard frosts during the winter without damaging the tissue. And so that, a hard frost is exactly what they need right now to essentially kill off the leaves, which no longer serve any function, and get them ready to bud out again in the spring.
Okay, so why do people have their frost control?
I was about to get to that.
Oh,
So you
okay.
once again rudely interrupted me.
Well, you're droning on here. I was hoping we could pick up the pace.
So if a vine has not hardened off, if it has not changed its cane from green to brown, then it's susceptible to hard frost and susceptible to necrosis from these cold temperatures. And so if you have decided to plant your vineyard at the very end of harvest to vines essentially straight out of a nursery that are still green, still growing, you're going to be a little bit nervous when it starts to turn cold in November. There's either that situation where you maybe have a very young vineyard that hasn't figured things out yet, and you need to protect them from the cold temperatures, and you would do that the same way you do it in the spring when the vines bud out their green shoots with wind machines. That, or you're a lazy vineyard manager who hasn't figured out how to turn off his wine, which I think is more often the case here. If you are in, that's in Napa. If you're in different parts of the U.S. or in the world growing grapes, for example, in the Finger Lakes of New York, you are going to be much more nervous about cold temperatures, because cold, obviously, as we both know, in Ithaca does not mean 40 degrees. 40 degrees means warm in Ithaca.
It'd be like South Barrington, Illinois, 11 degrees.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when you get to temperatures literally below zero with Vitis vinifera vines, you enter into a danger zone where it does get so cold where it can actually kill even hardened off plant tissue. And for those situations, they have a myriad ways of protecting vines, including literally taking the canes themselves and burying them under the earth or wrapping them in insulation, lighting fires around them, things like that. We are very blessed in Napa to not have to take steps quite that extreme. Carrie, will unseasonably warm temperatures this fall or winter affect the 2022
Well, let me
harvest?
add the drought to that, yeah.
The drought as well, harvest and subsequent wines? They absolutely could. Generally indirectly. So vines have pests and diseases that exist with them, that coexist with them to different amounts. Those pests and diseases are generally much more negatively affected by, this wine is so delicious, we're killing a bottle here.
Well, we're just checking to see how it's aging.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Update on the wine. It's delicious. And warm temperatures over the winter, which fail to kill off, a detrimental insect, or fail to kill off the mildew that has tried to overwinter on the canes, could affect the wines and could affect the growing season to come. I will say we've got some time left, so it's not like if you get a warm November, everything is lost. We still have time for cold temperatures, but an overall warm winter will change the vines and the reaction to things in very subtle ways. And drought, obviously, with 2 years of epic drought coming off the heels of two years of epic drought, if we get another drought winter, which we've gotten more rain already than we did all of last year, but if, let's say, it's just stops there, maybe we don't get any more rain, then the vines are going to struggle. Then they're going to be, they're going to want something to drink. Basically.
I think they're going to have some residual struggles from last year too.
Yeah.
So
there was some weak growth last year because of the drought, and so that is going to affect how the vines react over time.
Boy, it's really a reminder to all of us that we're in the farming business, and I've been in farming my whole life, and I guess it's fair to say you have been too. And it's just the way it goes. Farming is you are at a bit of the mercy of what the weather brings you, and of course now we have to add the changing climate to that discussion, a whole nother thing. And so.
But that's the relevant piece to it, is if it is just consistently warm year in and year out, pests which used to be controlled naturally will no longer be controlled, and we'll have a harder time with it. That's certainly keeps me up at night, even during these long nights in December.
Well, I've been waiting for this, sorry to say. Yeah. I'm excited to try. I don't know if you all have, but the 15 Merlot. Wow.
Yeah.
So this wine's got a little age on it. Yeah, 15. Gee whiz. As I remember, this had a fair amount of Cabernet in it.
Yep. Yeah, almost 20% Cabernet in this wine.
What year did you get married?
17.
17.
Yeah.
You weren't even a married man when I was not a grandfather when this wine was made.
That's true.
Oh my gosh!
You're making it sound so long ago.
Well,
it's only a 6-year wine.
A lot has happened in 6 years. I guess is what I'm saying. And
I think you can smell it in the wine. I think nothing's changed so much in 6 years as the Merlot, which, as many of you know, when the Merlot gets first released, and you guys probably have the 19 with you right now, or I hope you do. This is what we dream about when we dream about Merlot, is this kind of, this intermediate phase. It tends to happen, 2 or 3 years, tends to start really 2 or 3 years into its aging cycle, and this wine just gets bigger. The wine grows over time. It's really interesting.
Well, if this had a dumb period, which I don't really remember it having, but if it did, it's out of it now. This is really fantastic. This is what we're looking for. This is why, I think it's probably the biggest reason to be a frog fellow, if I can make a little pitch here, is that from time to time we give you access to these wines. And you know how rare it is? I don't know that we could go to very many of our colleagues in the Valley and say, hey, you want to trade some of your 15 for our 15? I don't think you...
We literally just did a Merlot tasting where we called up a certain other producer in the Valley and trying to get an aged Merlot from them. And they checked their inventory and they had 0 bottles.
0 bottles. And it wasn't even that old.
The winery itself that made this wine could not, even if they had wanted to, could not have tasted the wine that they had made 15 years ago.
And communists.
Basically, I think. And so if you hate communists, please sign up for the Frogs League one. That's basically what you're trying to say. Because Stephen asked how long should the Merlot be cellared. It seems pretty perfect right now. I think you nailed it on the head exactly now. I mean, this wine is awesome.
Oh, wait a second though. And because this reminds me a little bit of those Merlots. So the last time we made a Merlot with so much Cabernet or Cabernet Franc in it was 1998. I looked that up in my notes, and those wines, 90, 91, all those early Merlots are still just amazing in the cellar. So I don't rush into this. I don't say. I think this is. I think you can tell by the meat that is on the bone here. It's got a lot.
Are you speaking
metaphorically?
Okay. Just checking. Yeah, no, I think the wine is just exploding with fruit right now. We talked about how fruit aromas can decline over time, but sometimes they just well up from underneath. And I think the Merlot is this is killing it right now. The 15 was always a wine with great potential. 15 was another drought year, the second year of the kind of previous iteration of the drought. And the wines were, I think, especially kind of rough and rumbly when they first came out. They had a lot of tannin to them. They were very inward and dense, especially the Cabernet. And man, they're just starting to come out of their shell right now, and they're just exploding with flavor. It's really showing the potential of what we knew was a really good vintage, but it was like you were tasting potential at the time, and I think you're really starting to see everything that the wine can flex right now.
Well,
but yeah, no, I agree. This wine's going to go another 15, 20 years easy, and just continue to give pleasure. We were drinking Merlots from the early 90s. We had the 92 the other day.
Yeah.
That was just like what? What has happened? This is so good. So
yeah, they last forever.
Dan Riley, John, how involved are you in the
Let me read this question. It says, John, are you giving Rory some say in the winemaking now, or are you still doing it all yourself?
That's not what the question
I
says.
might on my glasses.
I know it's hard for you to read the questions these days.
Okay, I want to see how you answer this, because I don't think either one of us are actually.
So this is, to answer it flippantly, I do all the work.
We should read the question.
Yeah. So how involved are you now,
John? How are you
in the winemaking, or is Rory doing all the work now?
Yeah. There is a smiley face there.
Yeah. So obviously it's tongue in cheek. I would say that neither of us have ever done all of the work, and that's a super important point to make with these wines. There are way too many hands involved with this wine. Pablo Polanco, longtime cellar master, now been elevated to the position of winemaker, and which really reflects his influence. If you guys don't know who Pablo is, the winery, Pablo is as integral to Frog's Leap as anybody else, as honestly my dad or I. Our winemaker and the man who runs the show, really behind, isn't here in front of you right now, but is the guy who knows everything and is the biggest. He's like the therapist in the middle of harvest, and we're starting to lose our heads, and he's the guy who just says, it's okay.
I think what's important to understand is there are different roles in the cellar, and just like there might be different roles in a busy restaurant kitchen, and there's room for a lot of input, critical input, to make these decisions. So no winery is any stronger than the strength of their team. We have got a great team. Obviously, my almost 50 years of experience making wine now, Rory's deep passion for it and what he brings from the vineyard side and the understanding of these, because our wines are so terroir driven, so vineyard driven. But Pablo's been with us for almost 30 years, and that intense knowledge of but not only that, all of our cellar team, as many of them have been with us 10, 15, 20 years as well. Yep. That depth of experience, but also new energy. I mean, Sochi and Jairo bringing on new energy. So
assistant winemakers, Sochi Polanco and Jairo Gonzalez, who, winemaking is this idea of kind of solving for problems before they happen. Because really, you're bringing grapes in, and they're going to ferment the way they want to. And what you're trying to do is make sure the yeast are happy, make sure the conditions are right, and you need a lot of people to help understand and inform those kinds of decisions. I think it's always a little bit. It rings false in my mouth when wines are characterized as the product of only one person or something like that. That may be true on an extremely small scale somewhere in some places in the world.
I doubt it's true even then.
But it's the idea of a kind of there being a single superstar or something like that. I don't know, Dad. I don't think it's true. At least it's not been my experience or my observation. Working in wineries all over the world, really big and really small. There's always way too many hands, and there's always the guy who never gets the credit who
is making sure the hoses are clean.
Yeah, who's making sure the hoses are clean, because if the hoses aren't clean, honestly, it doesn't matter what your vision is for the wine's going to suck. Right. So it just, that's the way it goes. Sean Nelson, what is our favorite movie to enjoy a glass of Merlot with? No sideways jokes. Come on.
Come on, man. Sean, that's a cheap shot.
Yeah,
we're calling you out on that. Hey, there's my old buddy Bill Quain asking you a question. I'm glad to see you're still awake this time of day, Bill. So Bill's question is kind of interesting. When you produce a new vintage each year and taste the vintage for the first time, is it like meeting an old friend, or is it like meeting a stranger whose face reminds you of someone else? Wow.
Bill, this feels like a question for a personality test or something. Like if I answer it one way, I'm a type A, and I answer another way, I'm a type B.
Hey, Bill, you know I'm going to answer this question. It's kind of like meeting your grandchild for the first time. Is that a new person, or is that a member of your family, basically? And so, of course,
I hope you have the right answer to that.
Well, the right answer to that is all my beautiful grandchildren look a lot like me, so I can.
The ugly ones look like
I don't have any ugly ones. What are you talking about?
Good.
So you're meeting someone new, but you recognize the family in them, and so I would say that we're looking for both. We're looking for the individual personality that vintage brings to the wine, but we're also looking for that familial face in the wine. How was that for an answer? It was kind of artfully drawn, wouldn't you say?
They should have sent a poet, but instead they sent you. So, but no, it's fun tasting the first kind of iteration of the wines when they first.
How you doing there?
I need a little refill. Yeah, but it's tasting the 21 wines, for example, the new vintage of Cabernet and the new vintage of all the wines. It's exciting seeing the potential when they're very young. Obviously, they're pretty. It's kind of like like, wow, you've got a lot of potential in you, with the subtext that maybe you need a few years.
Well, and I think we should be honest. Often when we go to taste, we're not going on to say, "Oh my God, what's the?"
Is that blackcurrant or is that black raspberry?
You're in going. Is this thing spoiled yet, or
oh God, have we screwed this up yet, or what?
Well, no, it needs to be. Often our tastings at this, particularly in the early stages, are technical tastings. So we're really looking like, what's the next step? When do we bring what does this time wine need to rack? When's the time to sulfur? All these sort of questions. So
they also take place at 7 o'clock in the morning, which is a great way to strip all pleasure from wine. By the way, we like to make jokes about drinking early in the morning. But 7 a.m. on a Monday, it's not the way to do it.
Yeah.
But it is the way to be hypercritical of your own wines, which is important for making them. Is the 2015 Merlot still available?
No, it just sold out. I bought the last of it myself.
Okay, you're supposed to say it is.
No.
It's hard for you to read.
Yeah, well, you're going to have to race me to get the rest of this that's still available.
Because it's just awesome right now. Yeah. What changes did we make to the glasses and why?
Well, that's a question for Scott and Megan. Are we selling these glasses? These are beautiful. Do we sell them in the tasting room? Because I'm thinking I'm stealing some for myself.
Well, wait, do we keep a tight inventory on them? Or?
Yeah.
We just got, let's not sell them.
Yeah, so these are relatively new, so we're not, but they're beautiful. I think that we're always looking for the perfect glass to show our wine, and but there are practical considerations as well, in that these glasses get a lot of use. If they break, these are expensive glasses. If they break too easily, it's a problem. So actually, a shout out to Aaron, who just came to work with us at the winery. Gosh, 6 months ago. He took it upon himself to do a lot of research on wine glasses, and we did taste a lot of wines, and we came up with these, which are a combination of practical, beautiful, and really good for the wine. And so, what are these called?
Weissels. They're fun to pronounce too.
Yeah.
You know, we've been going with Riedel tasting room glasses for a very, very long time. They even have their own name, the TRGs, the tasting room glasses. The switch to these glasses are a little bit taller, a little bit of a more angled base to them, I think is a way, especially with the pours we give at the winery, that helps show off the beauty and the clarity of the wines. Does it make are you going to have tasted two separate wines completely out of one glass versus the other? The differences are subtle, but they're just going to nice glasses, I guess, is a nice way of saying it. They look cool.
Yeah,
that's good enough for me.
Well, you should show them Kyler's message you with. He was
my brother just before this seminar went and got a glass of wine at a restaurant and got it served in a lowball martini glass, which we won't do that to you if you come to visit it. For God's sake, we will not serve you the 15 Merlot in a
Please,
lowball
you guys,
martini.
the glass makes it a little bit of a difference.
If you ask nicely, we might serve you a martini in a lowball martini glass.
That could work. Yeah, that could work.
But only at the end of the day. You guys, if then are we ready to?
We got a couple minutes here, and I basically wanted to say this is going to be our last tasting with you, unless popular demand, Christmas Eve podcast from our cellar perhaps could happen, but it's going to be our last little bit of time with you before the end of the year. And I know the holiday. I woke up this morning and Tori had Christmas carols on at 7:30. So I know the holiday season, and we're on the last day of Hanukkah.
No, it's the seventh night of Hanukkah. So happy Hanukkah to everybody out there who celebrates. My wife and I are lighting the seventh candle tonight. So it's we're fully in the holiday swing of things, and we hope you guys are as well. It's been quite the year. We're very excited about the 21 wines coming your way in a few years here. We just put the first of the 21s, the 21 Rosé, just went into bottle yesterday.
That's right,
So you can look for that. It'll be actually the 21 Rosé. We should probably talk about it super briefly. Is a very small production wine because of the limited yields from 2021. So you guys, as fellows, are literally going to be the only ones offered the wine next year. So buy it up because it's not going anywhere else.
Things are going to get a little quiet here at the winery. Most of the vineyard staff is on vacation now. Before pruning starts. The cellar staff we finished the bottling yesterday.
Finished bottling, so I think we're going to scrub the floors and then wrap it up for the winter.
Things will be really quiet in the cellar. It's a great time to visit the winery. It's so beautiful.
Come on in, buddy.
Hey, Hal, what's going on? Hey, you want to be on TV? This is Hal, everyone. Wave to the camera there, Hal. Can you see yourself? Yeah. Yeah? Another generation of winemakers coming on. You going to be a winemaker? Yeah, that's my boy.
He signed up. We need HR in here to sign the paperwork.
So this is a great time of year to enjoy the beautiful wines we're making. It's a great time of year for us to thank you guys for all that you have done for this year. The Frog Fellows, you guys sustain us. It's very important. We hope you have a beautiful holiday season coming up. Please come visit us as the year develops, and keep enjoying the wines. You guys are really special to us. So here's to you. Have great holidays. Come and see us, or we'll come and see you. Right?
Is that a threat?
That's a threat, yeah. And we're going to finish the rest of this bottle of the 15 Merlot, which is absolutely stunning.
Hope you guys will as well.
Yeah.
So,
Take care,
cheers.
you guys.
Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah.